Okay, while you're disciplining him, discipline yourself because you need to go and reassess things.
Noted, will do. Simon
Thank
gave
Yeah,
it
okay, but
4 for what?
Impact.
Impact.
I've reasons for that. I'll explain it later.
I'm really curious about what's happened with your impact score because that's such an outlier.
Okay, it's wait no. Let's.
Yeah, I'll wait for everyone else to join. But
Okay,
I'm really
okay.
curious.
I'm also incredibly sleepy. If I drop during this call, on the floor, I do apologize.
Why is everyone so fucking tired? We've got 2 films to do today.
I did. I went. It's middle of
You're right.
festival, and I went to temple and shit. I am so fucking tired from just working this whole.
I remember you saying now.
Well, maybe you should have thought of that before you lived in London.
I just ate some of your yam rolls, Simon. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I loved that series of pictures where you're having a selfie outside of Simon's shop with Camilla in the first one, and then in the second one, it's just you with the yam roll, and you're like, oh my god.
Wait.
Yeah, I showed that to Rachel, and I was like, look at this picture, and then I scrolled to the next one, and I was like, now look at that one, and I started laughing even though I'd seen it before, and she said, I don't get what's funny, and I went, wait, watch it again, and I went back to the first one, and then scrolled to the second one again, and she went, I still don't get it, and I went, watch Camilla, and then I went back to the first one, went back to the second one, and she went, oh, that's what you're laughing at, and I went, yeah.
Come on, Rachel.
Sick.
Fuck. First you make Rob forget his Yu-Gi-Oh cards. A likely story.
I would show you them if I had them, but that's my only evidence I've forgotten.
Actually, talking about that, I actually found my box. Literal fucking box of Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Box.
It's a it's a fucking wooden crate thing that I made in secondary. I think someone made in secondary school. I just went, what can I store in here? Let's store Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I open it up and it fucking spilled out. I'm like, did I buy this many fucking Yu-Gi-Oh cards as a kid? Yeah, I definitely bought this many fucking Yu-Gi-Oh cards as a kid. So it's just okay, I'm going to just be like Kaiba in Battle City. Just going to go fucking open a crate and go, all right, let's play with these cards. Just choose whichever one you want and we'll just play. Some ridiculous shit.
You just unlocked a memory for me then.
Why?
You just took my mind back to a year 7 DT lesson because that's the only time we were in the same DT class. I remember there was, well, I won't say her full name because it's going to be on YouTube. But do you remember a ginger girl called Danielle?
Yeah, I know quite a few girls called Danielle, so maybe.
You slag.
So when we were in DT in year 7, she called me a fish cake, and I just instinctively called her a ginger cake in retaliation, and she got really upset, and she was like, it's okay for me to say it because you're not actually a fish, but I'm actually ginger. And you unlock that memory for me then.
Wow.
Which, I mean, to be fair, at the time I thought it was ridiculous, but I mean, it's quite reasonable. But now I'm looking back at it as a 33-year-old.
That's a fucking hilarious comeback. Jesus.
Fucking snowflake.
Right. Slips.
Well, you know, sorry, Rob, what's happened is Dracula has now been left in tatters. However, it has still scored just higher than Sorcerer. So technically, he's offended both of us.
But I finally agree with Emmanuel on acting and production skills, and I can't think of a better film to finally agree with him on.
Now you've betrayed me as well, I see. Fair enough.
Hey man, I very much, yeah, it's a great film despite those two qualities. Very much despite.
Not despite.
Oh man, honestly, I would go as far as saying Keanu Reeves in this is probably the worst acting performance I've ever seen in an otherwise decent film. I don't think I've ever seen such a gulf between what I think of a film as a whole and what I think of somebody's acting performance.
Oh, you fucked up my fucking double bill average. You bastard.
I guess you should have picked something else.
Oh, that was bitchy.
Yeah, that was me.
Well, I could say the
I'm
same
just kidding.
about you, Mr. Blister.
It's your pick tonight, by the way, Emmanuel, just in case you forgot.
Okay. Yeah, I did forget. I forget. I didn't know.
Yeah, shit. That reminded me. I forgot completely that we
Shit,
were
I
doing
remember.
John's picks, so I didn't realize I had a double bill this coming round. So I was going to
Yeah.
choose. I was going to choose my musical for this round. Realize, oh wait, it's a double bill, so I'm going to push it into the next round. So I'm going to choose something else this round for this double bill.
I completely
Wait.
forgot you had a double bill this year because you had two last year.
Did I have two? What?
Yeah, because you did the Chinese Odysseys and then you did Hachi and John Wick.
Oh yeah, because John gave me his double. Yeah. I forgot about that as well. Yeah.
That was
Strange
a brilliant
times.
reaction.
Strange times. Strange times.
Bloody Keanu Reeves, man.
Right.
It's funny because I chose Keanu Reeves for you first. I got a fucking like John Wick film first, didn't I?
This is the ridiculous thing, though. Like the four not John Wick, the four Keanu Reeves films that we've had. Bloody John Wick, The Matrix, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and now this. And I'm like, those other, like The Matrix, he doesn't really do anything, so it's like fine. John Wick, it's like, well, he just runs around with his hair being floppy, so it's like fine. And then Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, like there's an element to it where he's supposed to be acting like a twat, so it's like, all right.
Oh.
And then this, it's like you're against bloody Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins. Like you could put some effort in.
No, that's the thing.
I don't-
He can't.
Honest, can I just say one thing about that, and then we can move
Yeah.
on. I was reading that apparently Keanu was trying his absolute hardest to try and get his accent down, and he was acting so hard he was basically overreacting, I think. And his acting coach was like saying, "Dude, you need to rein it in a bit," and he just wasn't working, and he was really upset about it, and he was really self-conscious around Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins, and it kind of made it worse. So it was just like this vicious circle, and he was just like, I can't do this. So he just, and Coppola was like, this is going to take forever to film, so I did just fuck it. So sadly,
I'm glad
This
you
is what I
agree
mean.
with us in
This
this.
is
I'm glad-
Keanu trying his hardest. He just doesn't.
Yeah,
He doesn't
he
have
just-
it.
He can't
He
do it,
just
so
doesn't.
he should have been like, look, Coppola, fuck it, make Harker an American. It's problem solved.
Yeah.
I love the idea that Francis Ford Coppola was like, this is going to take too long to correct. You just carry on, Keanu.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Keanu, just speak normally. We could accept it. Don't worry.
We haven't got the film rules for this.
Fucking
Yeah, we're run out of 35 mil to do this right. We've only got 3 takes.
It's yeah. I'm glad you said that, Ben. It explains a lot about it because, like, for him, it's because he puts on. It's weird. When you see American actors purposely putting on like a British accent, and it's like it doesn't, and they do the cup of tea jokes. But this is like it goes full circle. It's like he's trying to go overly British, but he goes back into his American, but going back to his British accent. So it's like why did you say it in such a way? It's because of the way he said it's like it's the word. It's the main scene where he goes, yeah, it's bloody fire, isn't it? And I was like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Why did you say it in such a way? And I listened to that like scene a couple of times, and I'm like, I thought it was doing a bit. It's like, oh no, this is a serious movie. This is not a comedy. This is like, oh yeah, bloody, it's a bloody fire. And I was like, what the fuck?
He said bloody. I was like, dude, you pronounced that with a U and two D's. Like, but I kept getting that, and that's like, oh, actually, Alec, do you want to do your opening statement?
Yeah, we might as well. And get
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, Pat's not here, is he? Oh blimey.
Oh, sorry.
Nice
I'm just
bloke.
like I'm like a I'm like a dog on a lead, man. I just want to like get at Keanu.
While
You
we're
want to be the dog
oh, there he goes.
that Keanu loves.
Oh, here it is. Oh, yeah.
While he's getting situated, Emmanuel, while I've got you, you got a nomination for this round.
Oh, do I?
That's what I'm asking you.
You're under no obligation to have one.
You can just not have one.
It seems like a waste of a point.
No, wait,
Huh?
dude, you loved American Gangster.
No. I mean, it seems like a waste not to nominate.
Oh,
Oh, I thought you said it's a waste to have one this round. I was like, but you gave American Gangster nearly 10.
Shit.
Yeah. If they American Gangster, if it wasn't that, I would give it to my own. But yeah, American Gangster. I'm just kidding.
Yes. Okay. Wait, you're allowed to give your own nominations? Wait, what?
no,
Yeah,
do
we had
not.
to ban that when Humphrey tried to give all of his own films in nomination.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I just knew that was going to happen from day fucking one. I just
Like it
I
wasn't
think
even something
that's
we thought
Bram,
of,
it's
and
the
then
best
Dan.
response.
It wasn't even something we thought of, and then Dan was like, "Oh, I'm just going to nominate all my own films," and we were like, "No, that's probably not allowed."
Disqualified.
I nominate me and Hugo, please.
This film, that's Spanish, but I don't know it.
I'll never forgive him for that. Is
Anyways.
Pat with us?
Yeah, I think he is.
Okay.
Hey, Pat. He's
In
still
fact,
fuming from seeing
he's-
Crystal Palace beat Man United.
Okay.
This is not about Keanu talk.
Okay. Gonna be kind of comatose today. Yes, that's fine.
There's a lot
Okay.
of lag. Anyway, Alec, go on. I think Pat's frozen.
Oh no. No, he just does that. Are we doing one at a time, or are we doing both? Both.
Whichever way you want to do it, man.
Just sort of doing a loosey goosey. I'll just put them both forward, and then we can just let the chat evolve as we like. I picked these films for a double bill because there's vampires in them.
Okay. What? Okay. That was That was the whole thing.
No, no.
Right. I was waiting.
That was brilliant because it wasn't even funny until there was like a moment of silence.
Really into vampires. I'd never actually seen Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I always wondered about like the weird haircut Mr. Burns has in that Treehouse of Horror episode. And I was like, what the fuck? Who has bum hair? What's going on?
It's how we all first saw this film was through The Simpsons. Even me.
That's how we saw most films.
yeah. To be fair, you're right. Yeah. Anyway, continue.
And then when it was like quite early on, when me and Eb started dating, she was in Raynham and I was. Oh no, she might have been in Durham at the time. Whatever, she wasn't in my house at the time, and she was like, "Oh, I really want to watch this film," and I was like, "Oh, I keep meaning to. It's been on my radar for a while, but I just keep meaning to watch it. I just never actually do." and then so we watched it separately but together, and we were just talking to each other like the whole way through, and like we were doing it like in time. So we both started it at the same time, and we were reacting at the same time.
So you're
And it was-
multitasking, a la John.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, no, really. I was singular tasking.
Is that multitasking? I don't know. Is it? Is reacting to something?
You watching?
That's quite a philosophical conundrum.
I'm happy to take it as not multitasking. But yeah, I think it's just an interesting little oddity of a film where like a lot of I was saying to Rob, for every like bit of production or a bit of acting that I go, fucking hell, that was really good, there's another bit of production or acting that makes me go, Jesus fuck. Like, we can get into the nitty gritty later, but I just find it really interesting because I came out of it going like, that was really good actually. I really liked that. The acting from Keanu was fucking dreadful. Some of the effects were fucking dreadful. I love the bit when Dracula's on the wall and he goes like, neck. I think that's hilarious. Thank you, fire. Oh, you mean like the little fire rings things? Yeah, they're pretty bad too. But then they had the werewolf suit and they had the matte paintings. And I was like, Jesus, these are fucking brilliant. It's just such a weird little seesaw balancing act. Where like enough went wrong where I went, "Whew," but enough went right where I went, on balance, pretty decent. And then the other one's Interview with the Vampire, which I saw when I was like quite young. It might have been the first time I saw a nude scene in a film, and my dad, you could see my dad kind of internally go, "Oh fuck," and he was just like, look at that mum like, sorry. And I was like, this is a really cool film. This is like the best film ever. And he was like, yeah, I know. I think I was like 20 at the time. But yeah, it was. I think it's just such a cool little. I can't think of like another. I can't think of like something where the concept is just sort of just taken to like it's just like logical extremes, and it's just kind of like I don't know what else you like do after this. You kind of gave me the premise and you kind of exhausted all avenues, and I'm like, that was fucking excellent, like good going. I think everyone's bringing their A game. I get more amusement out of Oprah Winfrey calling it a force for evil. That's gonna just stick with me now. But yeah, I think it's such an interesting thing looking at vampires sort of through media, really, because they started off as a Nosferatu sort of evil monster kind of thing, and I don't know, there just seemed to be, because like in the original Dracula book, there's not a thing where he has a big boner for Jonathan Harker's wife, and there's no like thing where he goes to try and like seduce her, or you know, he's not being Mr. Steal Your Girl. He's just kind of a vampire in a castle, and that. So that's just, I think that's all completely fabricated for this, basically. And I think it's just sort of like this like weird trend that emerged out of like, we need to get in his head. We need to make him not like sympathetic, but like relatable. He needs to have something going on. And it's just kind of like, and I think Interview with the Vampire is like the next level of that, where he is the main character and we're like really getting into it and that. But I've talked a lot now, so yeah, fly my pretties.
Have you ever seen Lost Boys, Alec?
I've never seen Lost Boys.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick that at some point. I think you'd be interested in that because it's another sort of like evolution of what a vampire is.
You've been
It's sort of-
threatening me with that for fucking ages.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of films I've been wanting to pick for ages. It's just, but yeah, no, it's another different sort of like view on them, because in that they're more sort of, it's all an allegory for like drugs, and obviously that's like the blood stuff, right? But Yeah, the blood stuff always gets.
No.
But yeah, the blood stuff's always like, I don't know, it's always interpreted quite differently in it because it lends itself to quite a few things. And in these two, it's more sort of like, I suppose, fetishized a little bit.
Yeah, there was a lot more gay undertones in Interview with the Vampire than I remembered. But that's it.
Dude, that whole like opening bit. So I was also thinking during the opening bit, if you swapped Christian Slater with Keanu Reeves, Dracula would probably be a lot better. Because like Keanu Reeves could probably get away with Christian Slater's role, but Christian Slater would be a lot better at Keanu Reeves's role.
Yeah, that's a fair point. They both could do it. You're right. Keanu will basically fit better in modern day context.
Well, you could just have him doing his own accent, then he just has to go like, "Oh no, it's Brad Pitt in front of me."
It's really weird, actually. So, like, that's something I was thinking during the first, like, well, I suppose all of the first act really is before you kind of like settle into it. But watching Interview with the Vampire now is it's a little bit strange in like a modern day context because of how big Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise have become, and you don't really see stars of that like size in horror films. So, like, with that first bit where you see Brad Pitt's face, it's like, oh, yeah, it's Brad Pitt, but it's not Brad Pitt as Brad Pitt should be. It's a little bit jarring just because of like him being so big now.
See, I'm more jarred by Tom Cruise because I'm like, fucking hell, he's actually like acting. He's like, he's unrecognizable as himself. Like, he's just fully in like Lestat, and like I don't know, it's such a fun performance, and I feel like he really let himself loose with it.
Yeah, that was the era Tom Cruise really was trying hard to actually I can prove myself, and it's such a shame that modern Tom Cruise films, even if he's fine in them, it's just he doesn't experiment anymore. He does the same sort of films these days. Well, back in the 90s, he was doing all sorts of crazy stuff. He do fantasy, sci-fi, dramas, romantic dramas, and sort of like all sorts of crazy stuff. And he would always be flitting from both. But now he's just stuck in his little niche. He's kind of thinks he's good at one thing, which he is, but he doesn't really branch out with it like he did back then.
He's kind of cruising, if you will.
Yeah, on cruise control.
Do you want to do like opening statements for these? Yes.
I think Dracula is one of your best picks, honestly. Like on like a pick, not on like a quality of film level, but like on like an interesting pick level.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, because it's like what we were saying in the week, man. It's either the best shit film ever made, or it's the shittest best film ever made. Like it's a really weird sort of like. I think I can see what Francis Ford Coppola was trying to do with it. Like I think a lot of it is like an homage to things like Hammer horror and all that kind of stuff, but it's just like a bit of a tonal whiplash kind of thing for me, because outside of like the Hammer horror homage, that was a really like weird string of words. Outside of the Hammer horror homages, it's quite a serious tone, and it's like
the Hammer horror homages, yeah.
And it's just, yeah, I don't know, it rings really weird for me because like in terms of it being like an adaptation, I think it's really good because it does have that sort of like gothic horror feel to it, which I don't think you get from like other Dracula films. But where you've got, like I was saying in the week, where you've got Gary Oldman covered in kitchen paint and like all of these like really weird effects that you would have gotten away with in Hammer horror films because you had like different sort of like cinematic lenses and all of that kind of stuff, which kind of like masks it a little bit. Because you've got all that stuff as well, it's like, I don't know, it's a really weird sort of like, on one side I'm like, I feel like I should be taking it quite seriously, but on the other hand, it's presented to me in such like a weird way. And then when you've got Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder on top of that, I'm like, I don't know. like this. And it's like I think it relies, or for me at least, it relied a bit on me having like goodwill towards it. But I think it's such a good film outside of all of that. It's really weird. I think you calling it an oddity is like spot on. And I think this worked really well as a double bill as well, because Interview with a Vampire, you can't really, I don't think you can really take anything away from it. It's just a brilliant film at what it's trying to do. But yeah, I think advising us to watch Dracula first was, you done good.
Even though some of us ignored that.
I've seen them both before, so it doesn't count.
I wasn't in the two. I was just like, I'm gonna watch the one I know of, and I'm actually looking forward to watching. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna be watching for that other one. I didn't look at any kind of trailers or anything for it, so I really didn't know what to expect. But I was just like, I haven't heard this. I don't know. Let me watch the one I think I'll like more first. Yeah. I preferred the way I watched it, but that was just me.
You
Watching.
kind of did it like the Alien and Dark Star double bill, but this one had a much bigger budget than Dark Star.
Yeah, this was better than Dark Star.
Well, I don't know. I think Dark Star had more to overcome.
It's definitely better than Dark Star. Fuck you.
Be honest, I
Yeah,
didn't
man.
read.
Francis Ford Coppola put obstacles in his own way for this one.
But he did have at least one actor.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
What one actor?
Dark Star had no actors.
Oh, I didn't have a real problem, I think, with Dark Star in terms of like the production, acting, all that. It was the script. I just really couldn't get on with it, and it just like really ruined it for me. But otherwise, I thought they made a decent effort.
I'll take that. A decent effort versus let's replace Johnny Depp with Keanu Reeves for some reason.
Did that actually happen? Did they want Johnny Depp?
Yeah, do you
Yeah.
want to tell the story, Alec?
Basically, they wanted Johnny Depp, but Winona Ryder, for some reason, thought that the studio would prefer Keanu Reeves because he was a bit more established than Johnny Depp was at the time.
The
So
reason presumably being to mask her own difficulties with an English accent.
Weren't they like dating at that point?
Oh, were they?
That's the whole thing about the tattoo Johnny Depp got on his arm with Winona Forever. They were
Oh,
in a relationship for a good few years.
did you
And
say
then when they
because this would have been 1 year after Edward Scissorhands, right?
it was, yeah. And after
Yeah.
that they split up, he changed his tattoo from Winona Forever to become a Wino Forever. To fix on his tattoo. It's Wino
Shit.
Forever to this day on his arm. So yeah, I still think
I love that.
he would have been fantastic in this, I would have to say. It's such a shame they went with Keanu.
I think that's the thing, because I think like Johnny Depp as well. He's like when he's doing that sort of like
This
period
was his
accent. I
prime.
think he can be a bit distracted as well. To be fair, but like
Are
I
you
think what you were saying
that
about
he knows that the English don't say Budapest like Budapest?
Yeah.
and that's the thing, though. I mean, to be fair, like I think what you were saying before about Keanu Reeves being intimidated by Gary Oldman, like that absolutely comes across. It's like you can tell he's not comfortable in the role, and yeah. I mean, it's that's the one that really got me. It's quite early on. It's when it's just him and Gary Oldman, and he sort of like loses track of where Gary Oldman is, and then he pops up. It's like a little sort of like miniature jump scare moment. It's just like, it's the expression on his face. It's just like, what are you doing?
What's funny is that Gary Oldman can just do that. That wasn't like Coppola just went, just do that thing you do.
But that's the thing, like, given that the two like big boy actors in it are British, I can imagine Keanu Reeves was just like even more just like, oh man, this is a situation I didn't want to be in.
Yeah, that's the point.
It's really funny, like, because Richard E. Grant and I think Carrie Elway are also English.
Yeah, Richard E. Grant is as well. Yeah,
Yeah, he is.
Is Carrie Elway English?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Probably. I can't remember, to be fair.
He's gotta be.
Yeah, Pat says yes.
That was you.
Oh,
Pat's our VAR for the day.
Right. Well, while you're conscious, Emmanuel, do you want to tell us why you hated Dracula so much and why you're a bit cold in Interview with the Vampire? I'm too late. Oh no, there he is.
well.
What's going on?
Did you say why I was a
don't
bit?
Yeah. Why were you cold?
Who's that? Oh, sister.
He didn't have his sweater on.
I didn't have my sweater on. No, I actually did have a jumper on when I was watching it. Came back from work. Anyway.
No excuses.
Oh no, it was good. There were things that could have been slightly improved, but it was just depressing, really. That's it. I mean, otherwise, I liked it. Or I thought it was, yeah, I liked it. Thought it was good. It's just, yeah, depressing. Dracula.
Go on, have a go. Have a go at Dracula. You know you wanna.
I don't really.
Wow, that says it all actually. He goes, I mean, he goes, I want to have a go, just don't want to. Fucking hell.
It you have Hammer horrors, and you've got serious films, and like Rob said, it's kind of doing a bit of both, treading somewhere in the middle, and I'm just like I would have really got. I think I would have probably got more on if it was more proper. Like I don't know, because it probably did it pretty well for most of it. It's just I don't. Oh, sorry, I'm being very all over the place. I'm thinking about the films like Ed Wood with Love and like old Hammer horror, and thinking about how those were. But then obviously seeing how this was taking a lot from those kind of films. But I'm just like, I'm not liking any of this. Yeah, it's yeah, I didn't get on with it. Sorry, maybe I'll find some better words in a little bit.
Right,
That's okay.
let me have a quick crack at it before I fall asleep. So,
Go on, explain your
For-
four
for-
impact then.
so quick question: how many of you have read the actual Bram Stoker's Dracula book?
Yeah, I did it at uni.
Okay, so generally speaking, this Dracula for the movie, most of it was quite interesting for where it first initially set up. Then, with like as you said, with Mr. Burns is with the weird butt-shaped hair and the red cloak and stuff, right? That is absolutely original to this movie. That's where all of that stuff, like things, came from, right? Everything else is from like the book, And like everything else, like you could say, all right, that this movie had impact for like vampires in movies. I mean, no. More precisely, Nosferatu is probably what influenced like vampire movies more than this film, if you know what I mean. And like when I say as an impact, I mean like for the whole goddamn media of vampires. I say this is because even though Nosferatu is a black and white silent movie made in the 1920s, is what I want to say. So it's so fucking old, right? But that was the first vampire movie ever made. And that is probably the most influential vampire ever made because Bram Stoker's children tried to sue, like, I can't remember what's the name of the company, but they tried to sue him and they tried to destroy all of the films that were ever made. They couldn't because some of the films got to America. Then afterwards, copyright infringement and like all that shit got all passed by. And essentially, that movie got all made for all of the American audiences to go, vampires. That's such an interesting concept. We'll watch movies from vampires because of Nosferatu. Obviously, this was made in 1992, is what you guys said, right? For Dracula, right? So it took them over. It took them about 80 years before they could even make an actual Bram Stoker's Dracula film. Again, more accurate to the book, but it took them such a long time because between that time of vampire movies, there have been quite a few like Dracula movies, like not good, not bad. Some of them extremely bad. Some of them pornographic. But it's a whole list of like vampire movies. But it's to say that this particular film, this Dracula film with Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves' very, very bad British accent, being impactful and influential, I can't quite agree with it. Certain parts of that's why I give it like, did I give it a 5 or a 4? Sorry.
4.
I might like knock it up to a 5. But it's like
Weasley little Simon there.
But like in all seriousness though, it's like this film didn't impact that much for like the films or other films because there's so many other like vampire films already existed. And that's like not a problem in itself, I guess, but it's just like it wasn't really impactful. Whereas Interview with the Vampire is so fucking impactful because it introduced the idea for vegan or vegetarian vampires. And unfortunately for vegetarian vampires, all that means is that this film, Interviewing the Vampire, helped influence Twilight. And that's a thing that you have to live with because that's just like, yeah, I Interview a Vampire. Next stage for vampires, Twilight. And that's like, it influenced a lot. It's a very impactful film because that's the next stage of vampires, Twilight. And I need all of you to understand unfortunately, that's where it went. And that's like, well, we've ruined vampires now.
Dude, I've spent like 3 days moaning about Dracula, and this is the first time Alex seemed annoyed.
I think Pat looks more annoyed than I do.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to knock down Impact now. Because I didn't know that that's what inspired it.
Well,
Which-
no.
Hold on a minute.
It's not
This
inspired.
is Simon. This is Simon fucking conjecturing. This is not a fact. This is not the first thing that came up with vegetarian.
But it's going on what you just said, Alec. You said the next stage of vampires. Unfortunately, the next stage of vampires is Twilight. You can't
fucking vampires.
Well, it is though. That's the point. That's the problem because it is vampires. You can't
They're
disagree with
sparkly
me
twats.
Yeah, but they're sparkly
Interview-
vampires.
Sorry, Simon.
You can't
Simon,
say it's not vampires.
Simon,
No,
Sorry,
mate.
mate.
Simon. Interview with the Vampire did not come up with the concept of vampires eating
Oh
animals.
god. Oh dear.
No, but the sparkly,
It's very-
handsome guys did. Well,
There's no sparkly
well, like,
people.
Can I
in
make a
this.
point?
This is my favourite opening
Okay.
statement ever.
Can I say that? Well, I know
Okay,
You're
what's
just,
okay,
what's
Ben,
you're
what-
just
what's
drawing
your
a
point?
thread. You're just drawing a
It's not
random doodly line between some vampire films you watched. This is not
Oh,
Benjamin. Go for it.
what I was going to say is that Interview with a Vampire probably was opened the floodgates for all the horny vampires that would come afterwards, because
Oh yeah.
they've
Okay.
always been kind of like a thing and a kind of like something that many men and women would love and be drawn to. But there was the first one to cast heartthrobs in the role, like Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise of that time, and therefore that opened the floodgates for more like stuff that would appeal to more women and men of that age than it did before. Henceforth, Twilight much later on.
Do
But
you
it wasn't
blame
just-
something good for its shitty imitations?
No, I don't. I think that's what
No,
Simon's
I
trying to
just
say.
unfortunately, it's just what it impacted. So
'Cause
it's just
if we
like
start down,
something.
if we start down this line of logic, Avengers led to the Flash. Like I don't like. Yeah, it's not the Avengers'
Well,
fault that the Flash happened. Something shit
I'm not
came
saying
out.
it's the
Something
Avengers'
good.
fault. And
Oh,
also,
No,
that's
no,
why I'm
but
saying that
this
He's
is the
not
line
saying
of
that
good.
it's all bad.
This
That's
is the
the
line
thing.
of
He's
logic
not
you're
saying-
going down. You're going Interview with the Vampire had vampires that eat animals. Therefore, if you go down like 20 years, then another franchise made a story about vampires who ate animals, and it was called Twilight, and it was shit. Like I don't get.
I think
Well,
Sam was
okay,
just trying to say was sorry.
I'm just saying that the impact that the Interview with Vampires did, as Ben said, did open the floodgates. Unfortunately, like because
20
the
years
next
later,
film
yeah.
after, yeah, but like it also like we also have like other films that are vampire films that are after this. Actually, the direct sequel after Interview with Vampire is Queen of the Damned.
Yes,
But
and
it's
that
like-
is very, very much
what
like
film
what we're
is
talking about. It's very like teen heartthrob era kind of like.
Yeah, but it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate stepping stone to where vampires, as a general media, have got to. Is what I'm saying.
An unfortunate side effect. Yes.
Ben.
Yes,
can we do-
yeah, that's the best way.
Can I commission you a meme? Yeah, can you do the domino meme? But it's Simon's head, and it's just kind of like
Oh,
Interview with
yes.
the Vampire, and then the big domino is Twilight.
You know, there is
If you could have,
there's
if you could have like a little unrelated domino for Bram Stoker's Dracula that just goes to nothing.
I'm
oh,
on it.
actually no, there already is a meme about that being Bram Stoker's Dracula to Twilight. I'll probably find it for you. Just give me a minute.
You said
To be
Interview with the
fair,
Vampire.
I mean,
as
it's
much
probably.
as
I mean, like it's in between there.
as much as I've found that hilarious, I do kind of see where you're coming from, Simon. Like the thing that was funny was the
Thank you,
fallout of me
thank you.
saying it, but I do see where you're coming from, because if you look at the because what was when how many years were between these two? Was it like 4 years between Dracula and Interview with the Vampire?
2 years.
Oh, that's even more then. So if you look at kind
No,
of
no,
because
that's
they both do like a similar thing.
That's less than 4. That is 2.
Because they both do a similar thing, because it's like what I was saying earlier about how they both sort of like fetishize the idea of vampires, but the vampire that's at the center of it all in Dracula is a very different vampire to the one who's at the center of it all in Interview with the Vampire. And I think Interview with the Vampire is probably one of the first that sort of makes it kind of like a sort of like, well, it's that sort of like heartthrob character that you can kind of like pin. So yeah, it's kind of like a pin-up, right? And I can see how that thread goes to Twilight.
Yeah, you can have. There's a thread you can do, but at the base of it, like there's like a certain sort of seductive quality to a vampire. So they have to be a bit sexy. So yeah, and then if you're a teenager and you want to get your rocks off on something vampire-y because you're a fucking weirdo. Yeah,
Oh,
like
man.
I don't think that's Interview with the Vampire's fault. That's the fucking Mormons' fault.
Or get TV series like True Blood. The
Yeah.
books were
Yeah.
better. I have to say that after the first season, it sucked. Anyway.
I have to say, Pat, I didn't realise you were so affected by Twilight. Now that I've seen your scores.
I had to see each one of them in the cinema, and each time I wanted to hang myself.
And it was all Interview with the Vampire's fault.
Well, now I know
Why,
it is.
Pat? Why did you have
That's
to
not what I
check?
said, right? That's not what I said. I just said it's just the next step. Unfortunate next step. That's not. I didn't say it's full. I just said unfortunately that's where it goes. Unfortunately,
You did
Some
a
girl-
bit say it is its fault.
But to be
Some-
fair, though,
If-
Simon
if-
has given it 10
if that's
for
what
impact.
See, I mean, yeah,
Wait,
because it's impacted lots of things. It's playing. It's just like it wouldn't. It's the next step of it. Unfortunately,
What was unfortunate about that is that Simon's given it 10 for impact.
what you mean?
Huh?
What do you mean? It's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's impactful. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
no,
It
no,
really
no,
is
that,
impactful.
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So what's unfortunate is that you've highlighted this, given it 10 for impact, and then you highlighted it as made Pat tank his score.
Well, it's not tanked.
Oh,
it's,
I mean,
it's down by.
I can't say what for Pat, right? It's not. I can't make Pat's choices for him. I mean, if he wants to do that, it's his choice.
To be fair, Rob made me drop my scores for Dracula, so it's not.
You
You've
gave
not.
it 10 for bloody acting.
Then you made me think about it a
Guns.
bit. I was
Just
happy
a few guns,
having it
Patrick.
at what it was, and then
Dude,
you started your whatever it is.
Sorry, Pat. You were saying.
Yeah, there's a few girls that I used to go to school with who kept fucking bribing me to go. I got nothing out of it, but you know,
Oh man, that's
They bribed you, but you got nothing.
Yeah.
yeah.
like
What did they
I
bribe
can't
you
remember.
with?
I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
the second film. I remember walking out of. It was during the time I worked in cinema. So like the first film was like I think shortly after I started working in Odeon, and what was it? I was gonna say the first one. There were bits I thought, not too bad, but man, whatever. And then it blew up, and I was like, what the crap? So I was like, okay, let me actually read these books, whatever, because people were talking about the books. I was like, the books were all right. They had good potential. I mean, I could talk about the writer and her frustrations a whole nother time, but the second film, someone was trying to make me watch, and then I walked out after some fight scene. I was like, nah, this film's trash. And then the, I think what was the third one was okay-ish, but I just remember the music for the most part. And then I think,
Because Muse did it, didn't they?
yeah, yeah. So I was just like, oh, this is the interesting cut, some good music. And then was it the fourth? I know that we're not meant to be talking about Twilight. The fourth
No.
and fifth. I'm trying to think. They were a blur. I was like, fourth was
It was the
like,
fifth one.
it was the last film was split into two, something like that.
You
Oh,
went to
fucking
see
hell.
them all in the cinema.
I told you it was a long time ago. Though what I will say is
It
the
doesn't
first
say- it
one
doesn't say
wasn't the
that bad.
worst. The first one wasn't the worst. I kind of liked what they were doing. I thought the vampires were bullshit, but I quite liked the moody nature of it. It felt like a really, it's weird saying it, like a high-ish budget indie film.
Mm.
But then whatever followed was absolute fucking garbage. And then it spawned 50 Shades of Grey, which was worse. So
That
that's
shows
why
you, Alec.
that's why I
That's-
dropped Impact by 2, because it spawned Twilight and then it spawned 50 Shades of Grey.
So,
That's what
Simon?
you get
With
for
the
picking a
What?
film that has a
Oh,
dotted line to
50
50 Shades of Grey.
Simon,
yeah.
I
What?
hate you.
Oh, he's just
Why?
given us loads of lines.
Why?
What do you mean fucking why? He's dropped 2 points off impact because you made a weird fucking squiggly line between a vampire film and another vampire film that were not even related by time. There's fucking 20 years between them. Fuck's sake. They're just two that you've seen.
Oh, fucking hell.
Fuck's sake.
Oh man, it was really funny because Alec was in one part of the screen and then it sort of went blank. I didn't notice that he moved somewhere else, and it was actually Ben that's gone.
That would have been quite an exit, to be fair.
I was like, fucking hell, that's impacted Alec bad.
Weirdly enough, though, I think I remember you reading the Twilight books, Emmanuel. Because I think I remember you telling me, and then me being like, "Why are you doing something like that?" And you were like, "No, just am."
Oh man, but yeah, they were actually decent. It's just the only what I would say about her writing. The host is actually much better, and it's got a dark undertone, which is different. It's not about vampires.
Did you
But-
see the film?
Yeah, that film kind of sucks.
It sucked. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, wait, what is this? The book was like, it was it was much darker and had a different feel to it. And you had moments, but it was just like the thing about her writing is she likes to hint at stuff and then just never write it. So it's always frustrating because it'd be like, oh, that sounds really interesting. But then she'll never go into it and then just carry on. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, taking the piss.
Anyway, none of them featured Dracula dropping a live baby into like 3 of his like concubines, and then there's just viscera everywhere. So you know,
That's a good
who,
thing.
who gives a fuck? No, the
That's a
film
good
doesn't.
thing. That was
Nah.
terrible.
It was brilliant. I was like, this is the film that doesn't give a fuck.
Reacted.
Brilliant.
It's reacted. I'm just remembering it now.
It relied on Keanu's acting, yes, but
Oh my goodness. This is, oh my goodness. No.
Bloody Keanu.
I just, no. Who casted him for this? Oh, sorry. I know.
Yeah,
Cast
to be
him into
fair-
anything.
Well, I think if you're going to be critical of anyone, it's probably the person doing the casting. Because surely you'd test out whether an
Also-
actor would be able to play the role that you want them to play.
But I do also find it weird that he's managed to make a whole career out of not being very good at acting. Like, I don't know. There's not many careers where you can just go, I just want to do things that don't require much. And that's fine.
I mean, there's different levels of acting. He's probably a lower level actor.
he's
But
basically like on the same level as Megan Fox, except he's not mental.
so she was quite hot back in the day before she started getting all the work done. So I would have paid to watch her.
You're the
I did
problem. You have paid to watch her. That's
2 Transformers, 2 Turtles, and what was that other film that she did? Jennifer's Body. Jennifer's Body.
What-
That was,
packet
what
of
a
Christmas
weird-
days.
What a weird combo that was. 2 Transformers, 2 Turtles, and Jennifer's Body. Just shit everywhere.
and then the awful film known as Jonah Hex.
Dana Hex, I forgot that existed.
That was fucking dirt, garbage, crap, whatever.
That was, yeah. It was quite
The
something.
fact that Josh Brolin was in it and he couldn't do anything.
Shouldn't have mentioned Megan Fox. Let's get back on track.
Alec hates us going off track on his films.
Who wants to do an opening statement who isn't Simon, who's
Yeah,
banned
go on.
speaking
that I
for the
can
rest
talk.
of the call?
No, that I
Well,
can
Talk
talk,
about
I'll do one.
Twilight, but
No. Because
No more
I'll go
Twilight.
into,
There's no
I'll go
there's no
into-
connection to Twilight.
I'll go into a fit of rage and then be glad that Cedric Diggory did die.
Oh god.
Anyways,
Um,
so how did you find
No.
vampires compared to in video games instead?
Banned.
Okay, so let's get on point. So
I've
Bram
muted
Stoker's
you.
Dracula. Bram Stoker's Dracula was a film that I'd seen years ago. So like when Alec picked it now, I probably hadn't seen it for about 20 years, something like that.
20? Wait, you saw it when you were like 14?
I saw loads of horror stuff when I shouldn't have at that
No,
age.
I'm just surprised that you saw this because it's like, well, it's never been like the most popular film.
I don't know how I came to watch it. I think it was on TV one time, and I was like, "Oh, this looks interesting," and just sat down and watched it. I have sort of a soft spot for how it looks. Like you guys were bringing up Hammer horror stuff, and like growing up, I loved Hammer horror stuff. But I think this was supposed to be fucking distractions, man.
That's exactly how I felt every time Keanu Reeves popped up.
But this was supposed to be sort of like a level above Hammer horror. It looks, don't get me wrong, it looks dated now. Like there's a lot of stuff that around the same age, like you mentioned the other day, looks better. But I still think it was fine to look at. I didn't really have a problem necessarily with Keanu Reeves acting or what's her face. Can't remember her name now.
Winona Ryder.
Winona Ryder.
That's the one.
Yeah, why not for
But I didn't actually know that Johnny Depp was originally planned for that role, and I do think he probably would have been better. But you also got to remember at that time he probably didn't come up with that sort of Johnny Depp style British accent, so we don't actually know whether at that point in his career he was going to be a right fit for it. I think after Pirates, you probably say, yeah, he would have been perfect, but who knows?
I'm off to Budapest.
But for me, like,
Have you been
what I
playing
loved
before?
so much about it were basically Dracula and Van Helsing. I loved both the way they're portrayed. Like one of my favourite scenes in it was when Dracula turned into that meat bag thing flying around in the room. I can't remember. Do you know the scene I'm on about?
Yeah.
That scene, and then obviously the scene where he meets Keanu Reeves for the first time, but I'll go into that later. I thought Gary Oldman absolutely killed it. I loved the location, or how the locations looked, and just the way it was written and all. Like it's, I wouldn't say the film's necessarily stood the test of time, but I still think it's a damn good film. As far as Interview with the Vampire goes, or With the Vampire goes, that might be the best vampire film I've seen. I haven't seen the Lost Boys yet.
Oh, not.
Nah, but you have threatened us for like 2 years to pick it.
Well, I've got a pre-Halloween pick, haven't
Oh. But like sort of before finding out certain links that people have put together now.
The links that Simon, a mental person, has put together for no reason.
I've always felt it felt like a very gay film.
It is a very
But
gay.
I appreciated it for that sort of aspect, because like vampire films that are usually portrayed in like a really dark manner, I don't really think this was that dark compared to other ones. Settle down, Rob, you put me off.
This makes too much.
I loved how much of a dick Tom Cruise was. Sort of the way he sort of got Brad Pitt's character and sort of turned him and was constantly trying to get him to eat drink proper blood, and he ended up drinking animal blood and was afraid to sort of take a human for obvious reasons. And then the one thing I wasn't too keen on was what's her name? Help me out. What's her name?
Which one?
Kirsten
Spider-Man.
Dunst?
Yeah, that's the one. She was a bit, I don't know. I didn't really care for her character so much. I'm probably in the minority, but I found her quite annoying.
I wouldn't say I found her annoying. But
I think she's a good little actress there, considering she's like what 12.
I mean, I'm not saying she was bad acting in it. I just found her character quite annoying. Whether it
I
was
think
supposed
it's
to be the case.
working where you work. That's probably.
Huh?
I said I think it's probably working where you work that's done that.
But like I like the sort of the narrative of it, where obviously it's an interview from Christian Slater to Brad Pitt, and then you go through this whole story, and then the sort of ending is fantastic. Like, I think it's just all put together so well. And again, it's another really well shot film, with nice locations. But I think it's definitely the best vampire film I've seen.
I think it just really, really shines, I think, when Claudia comes into it, because you have those things of like Louis and Lestat are trying to be like parents to a degree and try and teach her where to go and stuff. And I think I just really, really love that little sequence where she's getting a dress fitted and the lady like cuts her finger and she's like, ah, jeez. And then like Claudia's like, oh, let me get that for you, and starts biting her. And Tom Cruise comes back and he's just like, for fuck's sake, who are we going to get to finish this dress? You
Oh yeah,
practicality.
absolutely. Favorite scene, best scene. It's
Shut up.
hilarious.
Also, I thought there'd be a bit that you'd appreciate, Pat, with the piano teacher, because I think he's a bloke from Only Fools and Horses.
Really?
Yes, it's Trigger.
Yeah, he's Trigger.
Oh yeah.
That's Trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what's his name?
Roger Lloyd Pack.
Pack. Yeah.
But I really also like that bit where like she just kills him as well. And the stat comes in and he's just like, "What have we told you?" Like I think that's just where it really, really hits its stride there. Just the idea that you have like these two vampires and then they've brought a kid into their life and they're trying to teach her how to do it, and then you have like these conversations where Lestat's being a right mum. And like, yeah, I just
And you guys were
Really love-
talking about Tom Cruise and his acting a little while ago. This is probably my third favourite acting performance from him, behind
Few Good Men.
fourth then.
Oh.
A Few Good Men, Vanilla Sky, and The Last Samurai.
I've never seen any of them, so apart from A Few Good
Really?
Men, obviously.
All three of them are on my list, but you know my list is massive, so
Pat's list is massive. Everywhere he goes.
God damn it.
I knew that was coming.
Need to pick Lost Boys, Rob.
All right. It'll be a second Joel Schumacher film, which
Here
is
is
which makes us the first
2039.
people to say that since Warner Brothers.
It's Joel Schumacher. God.
Rob, that fucking whatever's behind you is really distracting. It looks like a giant penis.
That's a sofa.
Oh.
Oh, I see it actually. Yeah.
I was like, no, that's just Rob's head. He's just got a wrinkly turtleneck on.
Oh man. Okay, who's next?
I don't know. I feel like Ben had some feelings because
You know-
Simon's bad at talking.
Well,
You
is
know
it
what's
just me?
happened is I'm last, so now no one wants to talk.
Well, shall I begin?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do it.
Oh, I liked it because it inspired Twilight. Moving.
Andy Ben.
Damn, it's 20 past 11 and we've already banned 2 people from speaking.
I'm joking. Let me get to it. No, like Dracula and Interview with a Vampire. There've been films that have been on my list personally because I've loved both for like probably as long as Pat has actually. I saw them at a young age and they made a huge impact with me. And they kind of like, yeah, like Alec, I really like vampires and the mythos surrounding them, and I love the book Dracula and everything that became was inspired from it. And so, any film adaptations, TV, any other book that involves a vampire or to a degree will always be of interest to me. But firstly, for Dracula, I feel that this is for me the most definitive version of that story because it's everything about the story that I love put to the ninth degree. It's kind of like it's a big sweeping epic. It's excessive, indulgent. It does swing for the fences, and it's batshit insane. An emphasis on batshit, but it's cerebral and gory as well as being creepy and eerie. Because I don't know, maybe I don't find the tonal dissonance distracting, but I feel it works for this because it's kind of like Shakespearean. It's kind of meant to be kind of like very over the top, very dramatic, and very kind of theatrical in that sense. And I really love bringing that to the Bram Stoker's story in general because I think it just is a perfect pairing. And it's kind of like the film is, in a sense, kind of like the best of what the Gothic genre can bring about because it's Gary Oldman's performance. I think of all things about this film, I think we all can agree that he kind of makes this film worth making. He's the reason why this film is as good as it is, or one of the very main reasons. Like every other Dracula before and since has to level up to him because I love Bela Lugosi, I love Frank Langella, and every other actor that's done him as well. But I think Gary Oldman kind of like brings his own style, his own kind of pathos and originality, but still faithful and very, very faithful to the ones that came before as well. He has like the little ticks or things in here and there that Bela Lugosi might have done, and just like what you expect Dracula to be like. He has the voice, he has the presence, but you can understand why someone like Mina would be seduced by him because he has this. There's something about him that can make him irresistible, and Oldman has that in spades. And another thing about the film I love, like we mentioned before, that a bit of a contention was how Coppola brought it to life because you guys mentioned Hammer Horror being kind of like the bare bones reference and homage, and I don't think it is that per se. I think it goes back further. I think it goes back to what Simon said. It goes back to Nosferatu and Bela Lugosi's Dracula, what came out in the 1930s. It's going back to that time, and Coppola was like, "I'm going to go back and forget all this modern advancement of technology. I'm going to go back in time and use the technology they had in the 30s to kind of bring this film to life in the way that's it's a very good tribute to that era and where horror movies as we know them began, because it has this like German expressionism style to it. It's like the practical effects just really like shine, especially as Alec was saying with the transitions and the shadow puppets and the pyrotechnics that were involved to bring these like monsters and Dracula's many forms to life. Because I think that's one of the cool things they did. It was like, even though Stan Winston didn't do this, which he doesn't into a vampire. It has that style of like, if we can do this for real, we'll do it. We'll put go on in all this crazy makeup, and not just like the wax kind of like makeup Rob was going about, but I mean, he was in the vampire suit. He was the wolf as well. He was in those costumes. Even though he probably hated every moment of being in those crazy things, and he still was there. Oldman was like part of it, and it really comes across that they do that and make the dark direction so like precise in that way, and that's why I like it, because you can see that like it took care and attention. It was a bit artistic merit went into every sense of it. Like everything was kind of like, everyone sweated and like their fingernails were probably bleeding trying to reach these deadlines to try and make this film look the way they did. And it wasn't like half-assed. It was just kind of like, yeah, let's going to work ourselves to the bone to make this look like something that was made in the 30s. And like Rob says, it probably does look dated because of that, but it's kind of like it made it more timeless in the sense that it was something that was akin and integral to the story of Dracula and monster movies in general. So that's probably the main reasons I loved it, for those reasons, because it just was like, it's nothing, no other Dracula film since then has come close, because they've always used CGI to cover up the seams. They've kind of watered things down when they should have been violent. They kind of glazed over it and stuff like that. But this one really kind of like uses that to the breaking point. And even if it does break at some points, I feel it kind of works, at least for me, because it kind of shows you how far someone would want to go to make this kind of like this vision come to life.
I think that actually, like what you're saying about the shadow puppets and that, that's called a dumb show, and I think them having that like right in the opening is like a perfect encapsulation of like the effects in this film, because dumb show is like fucking outdated as fuck. Like you'd have it in like shitty theatre, and it's something like
that's what they could do. Yeah,
it's like you kind of see it and you go like, damn, this is a really, really old technique that they're doing here. And then you have a bit where Dracula like impales someone, and you have a bloke and he's been impaled, and he goes, and you go.
it's just like how you'd imagine it to go as a child watching it. Is kind of like, this is like a fairy tale brought to life, and that's why I liked it, because it is like that. And the reason why those things stand the test of time, because even if they are dated, they're still easy for anyone to do and bring to life.
Well,
So
that's what I was about to say, was that effect. I thought it was like quite effective, and then the impaling happens, and I find it quite funny. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I wouldn't blame anyone for laughing at that.
yeah,
and then I
like,
think the bit with them going through all the people who have been impaled, I was like, that's a really effective visual. I really like that. And it's like a technique that's not been used for ages, but it actually does a really strong like kind of visual thing. And I was just like,
Yeah.
that's brilliant. And I think that's like a perfect little microcosm of what this film is, because then you get to the werewolf costume, and I think that still looks fucking phenomenal. I can't see like a scene. You
can't see
Rob was
seams.
saying you could see the the literal seams on Gary Oldman's wig in the opening sequence. But that werewolf, you can't see diddly on that. That just looks like it's real, and like even though he's trying to do like an effect where you have Gary Oldman's face over it and stuff. Like you look at that prosthetic, and it's just great. It's just brilliant. Like
Yeah, like the American
effect,
werewolf.
yeah, and if effects age for definite. But I'm like the fact that werewolf still looks really good, and like the bat costume he has, that still looks really good. Like all
Yeah.
the makeup stuff, that just hasn't. That's still going. That still looks really, really effective. And it's like that. It's bits like that that just elevate it. And then that with the matte paintings as well.
Yeah.
I was.
They
Am I
both
looking at a photo? Is it one of them photos that I think has been painted? But it
Sometimes they kind of paint the negative on the film itself, which is really
Oh, right.
really interesting.
Okay.
So
Oh, 'cause I guess I got to do it like.
they either do it really tiny or they kind of like blow it up and paint that and then like film that with the negative projected onto it, which is
That's
what they did
amazing.
in Star Wars. Really
Okay.
smart
Yeah,
stuff.
that's what they
I
did
did
with
not know that.
Howard the Duck as well.
Yeah. So that's what I love. It's like they should be filmmakers these days, especially should try and go back to that style because it's kind of like when Coppola did it, it wasn't really a novelty at that point because all these great films were coming out. Like Rob mentioned, T2 and Jurassic Park. They were just at the cusp of like this visual special effects and reinvention that kind of like turned cinema on its head. But like if this film was made now as it was, it will probably be heralded even more because I think it's in this in between stage where it's kind of like it's too old, but it's not old enough to be a novelty.
It looks a damn
But
sight fucking better
it's-
than just shoving in a stupid effect and working people to the bone to get it to look halfway real when it won't
Yeah,
ever
and
look.
you
like
know when I
it.
say they worked with the band, I don't think it was anywhere close to how they work these CGI artists nowadays. It was just like they had a budget, they had a deadline, they just made it and they did
Shit,
it.
some specialty paint. It'll probably look better than She-Hulk. Like, you know, just at least it
That
looks
would
like
be
a mountain
mental.
range.
Yeah. I think
Anyway,
that's the thing for me, though, because it's like it is that sort of, I don't know, you're going from like one extreme to the other a lot, and the effects that look really good, I think usually are the effects that they have. Where it comes across to me as this anyway, that the effects that look really good are the ones that they haven't really thought about so much, so they've just done the best with what they had at the time. Whereas the ones that look a bit wonky now are the ones where it seems like they're trying to emulate something else. And
Mm.
I think when you do something like that, you sort of lose what I think is like an essential element to it all. Because back in like the 30s through to like even as late as like the 60s, the reason that they were using the techniques that made things look the way that they did is because, well, it's either because they didn't have like the budget to do anything bigger, or they didn't have the resources to do anything bigger, or just that nobody had ever done it before, so they were still working out how to do stuff. And that's kind of like when you look back at older films, that's the kind of thing that makes it all really cool, because it's like, well, if you're trying to like work it out as you go along, or if you're trying to like do the best with like very little, that's when you kind of look at it and go like, oh man, so that's actually it's cool that they thought of a way to do it like this. When you take that away and it's just like somebody trying to emulate it, and especially when it's sort of like flipping back and forth between something that's really cool and then something that looks a bit weird now, it's kind of like, well, I don't know. I think you just you lose the element that makes it impressive, I think.
I think it definitely does create a jarring effect, but I do think it is what makes the film unique. I think
Yeah.
it is gives
It's an
it.
oddity, like you said, it's an oddity, and I think that's why I like it.
It's just like it's just got a certain charm to it. It's just such a just a hot mess of a film.
Yeah. It's like I was saying in the week, man. Like, to be honest, I mean, this sounds like an insult. I don't mean it as an insult, but it's a similar quality to Street Fighter for me, because it's like it like a big part of the appeal for this for me, even though I've spent like so much time complaining about Keanu Reeves and whatever. A big part of the intrigue of it all for me is this just it's like, I don't know. It's just so weird. Like it's and there's all these things like the production value and like Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder that add to that. And you know, if you changed it, it probably would be a better film. I'm not sure I'd like it as much so, because you take away that element of going like, what's this?
Yeah, that makes it original, makes it like completely unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
just
that's why I'm fond of it. For those
I
reasons.
just imagined you just swap out Keanu Reeves with Raul Julia, and I was like, oh god, that'd be so good.
That would be good.
Raul Julia
Yeah.
could make me believe he was like 20 years younger than he was. He's that good an actor.
Yeah.
I think with Raul Julia as well, it's just like, I don't know, you can't. He's got that quality where you just want to believe what he says.
He could pronounce Budapest that way, and I'd go, fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Was he
Yeah.
even still around?
I think he would have probably. I think this was towards the end of his life. I think he was still around.
Oh yeah. Oh damn, he died like the shit. He died. He died the day after I turned 1.
Oh.
Damn.
Well,
So he could have
don't
been
do
in
that
Dracula.
again.
Yeah. I'll never turn 1 again.
No one will. Can I just quickly say my thoughts on Interview with a Vampire?
Only if they've got fuck all to do with Twilight.
Yes, they have fuck all, thankfully.
Excellent.
But I think, this film was just so compelling in a very similar, but at the same time, very different way. Because I feel it's a film that's just as sweeping and operatic and big and Shakespearean as Dracula, but in a more smaller scale. I think it's more of a character study, character piece, and it just shows you like Dracula kind of that set the rules of what a vampire is and what it means to be one. And Interview kind of like showed you, kind of subverted it in a way, and kind of like showed you what it really would mean to be a vampire. As in, you have these two sides of it, that people who embrace it and people are kind of like burdened with it. And both characters of Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt as Lestat and Louis kind of perfectly represent the dual sides of vampirism. And that's what's so fascinating about the film is the two kind of like parallel stories going off of how they both deal with the burden and the curse of the what it means to be a vampire. And in a similar way as Dracula was, it's a great film because it's that the costumes are so good, the music is so good, and how everyone puts their all into it, and the visual effects also fantastic thanks to Stan Winston. It just kind of like, it's kind of like the evolution in a way, I like to think. And it kind of like showcases like there are two sides of vampires, like I mentioned. Like in Dracula, that Gary Oldman was the master of like being a shapeshifter, and there was two sides to him. There's like the demonic and monstrous, and on one hand he was a shape-shifting, lustful and sexy seductor, I could say. And basically Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise have that in spades as well, because it's like one moment Tom Cruise can be this seductive being, and then next minute he's this horrible demonic thing. And Brad Pitt kind of like, you see him on the journey witnessing this, and it's like, what have I become? Why have I chosen this life for myself? And bringing in Kirsten Dunst's character, I can't remember her name. She's very tragic, because it's kind of like you're bringing this child into this world of basically immortality. She's going to be a kid for the rest of her life, and that is so fucked up by any stretch of imagination. And that's what's so brutal about it, because it is a bittersweet film, even more than Dracula is, because it's kind of like everyone doesn't. It's not a happy ending for anyone. Maybe even you could argue that Lestat is the only one that has the happy ending, and he doesn't deserve it. And so that's the tragic thing.
He gets the happy ending by being like just fucking amoral.
Yeah,
but
and
like
that's the thing. What lessons are there? And it's like,
Lestat's one of those characters that I absolutely adore watching, because he just doesn't. He just does what he wants to do when he wants to do it.
yeah,
And I really envy characters like that, and I think there's just something so freeing about watching a character do that, and I think that's precisely why he's paired with Louis, because
Mm.
you project yourself onto Louis because he really cares about preserving
cares
life.
about- Yeah, he cares about himself and others, and he kind of like learns lessons along the way, and brutally so. And it's kind of like everything I do has an impact, and I can't predict it, but I can at the same time I can learn from it. And but
Whereas the
that
stat
does not.
yeah, the stat doesn't care, doesn't want to know.
It's
Like, he
just-
knows what he wants to do. He just wants to go and do it. And it's,
Yes, that's what's so fascinating about it. It's both characters, both actors just do absolute, like they swing for the fences and they just bring their all into it, and it's so good for that reason. It's such a sharp script too, because it's kind of they're so realized.
I like that they have the sense to have Lestat be absent for quite a lot of it. He's there for like the first half, but then you kind of learn more through like Armand, and Armand has a way of articulating why Louis is so attractive to other vampires in a way that Lestat can't recognize or verbalize.
Mm.
And I think it's a show of a really confident script to have your big character Lestat de Lioncourt, and you just remove him for the next half of the film. And he comes in again for the end and that, but like I like it is Louis' story, and Louis isn't treated as some boring guy we've got to hang out with like all the time. The way Lestat sees him. But even then, I love that. I love Lestat going like, "Oh, Louis, always whining for fuck's sake!" Like, I think that's so funny. But yeah, like you said with Claudia, like she, you know, you might think she's irritating, but like imagine you're like fucking 12, and you just get told that you're just going to be 12 forever now. And
yeah, that's mad actually. That is really worth picking up on, because it's like, if you think about like how slow time moved as a 12-year-old, and now you've got like eternity to deal with. Like
I think it's just me getting old, being grumpy, and sick of whiny children.
Yeah. But you got Lestat as a parent, and you've got Louis as a parent, and these two are not. They're continually just at odds with each other. And the stat brought her into it purely to use him as her as like a manipulation tactic to keep Louis around, because he was getting sick of him. And it's like you've been brought you've lost your youth to this guy who just wanted to use you as a pawn to keep Louis around. I'd be a fucking dickhead. Like, I mean, I am, and I didn't even get subjected to any of that. But
it's that bit with like the older woman when Thingy turns up and he's like, "Oh, I can't believe you're like eating rats and shit. Like, you're a disgrace and whatever." And then he's like, "No, you've like condemned me to eternity in hell. Like, you don't get to tell me anything," kind of thing. Like, I think that's a really sort of, it's a bit on the nose, but it's quite an effective way to frame it, because it's like, man, if you're an adult and you've now got to deal with like an eternity of this, like yeah, it's unimaginable for a 12-year-old man, because you can't really like your frame of reference is literally 12 years. Like, how are you supposed to cope with like being frozen in that point in time where like your brain isn't developed yet, and all of this like awful stuff? Yeah, that is. I can see why you found it so depressing, Emmanuel, because you always seem to like relate with like child characters. So yeah.
which is something that's dealt with like shit in the Twilight books. I'd just like to say, you have the immortal child thing, bollocks, because they all go, "No, you just live if you're a vampire child, you just live life up until you're 20, you're 25 kind of thing. Then you just stay 25 forever, and it's basically perfect. And it's like, shut up, fucking shut up. Either make the kid a vampire or don't. Don't do this crappy fucking shite thing where you just age to 25 in the space of 2 years, and your life's just brilliant forever, and you're just young and hot for the rest of your life. Like, this is crap. Like, Interview with the Vampire is so much fucking better. They actually like just get down into it, and they do the nitty gritty stuff, and they have the vampire single dad who's like trying to find his way in the world because he doesn't know fuck all about it either because the stat's a dickhead, and then he gets seduced by our man, and then he thinks he's safe, and then he gets put into a coffin, bricked into a fucking wall while his daughter is like just seared into just a dust statue. And it's like, yeah, you can't really do this is what I was talking about with like the promise of the premise thing, where this is what you do with a vampire story. There is no stone unturned with this vampire story. Like, here's what fucking happens, and I'll eternally love the end of it, where Christian Slater's like, no, I need this thing. I need this thing in my life, and he's like, I've failed again. I don't believe it. I fucking spelled it out for this motherfucker. I told him this story where I had 200 years of just abject misery, and he's now like, yeah, make me a vampire. I love it. And he's like, fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Are you fucking real?
I think
I
that's the thing,
I
though.
just
Like,
love the look on his face.
that's the difference between them, though, isn't it? Because like Interview with the Vampire is like, it's kind of like a misery horror, where the horror isn't like the monster. The horror is like what the effect of like living that life is, and it kind of like encourages you to relate with them so that you can feel the horror through like how miserable it must be. Whereas Twilight is just fantasy, like it's just like an idealistic version of it, and it's not really the purpose of like the
You can
monster
almost say
that is there.
there's not a lot of through line at all, really, and you can take surface level elements from this to make Twilight, but you've basically misunderstood entirely what Interview with the Vampire really is, because the true moral of Interview with the Vampire is that don't go to fucking France and don't trust the fucking French.
But I can see why somebody would watch Interview with the Vampire and then go, oh man, I need like an upper after this, so I'm gonna write a story where you're not 12 forever and you just get to live an ideal life if you happen to meet a vampire.
Hey, I can see the squiggly line that Simon drew, but do you want to weigh in? Do you want to weigh in, Simon?
Oh no,
I think
I'm
you
just
scared him
thinking
off.
vampire stories in movies are good. I think they're better in video games.
That's a
Because you could-
sweeping statement.
Because like you got all of the
Alex triggered.
as Alec was saying, he's got all the stories
No.
about no thing is like unturned. But there's so many types of video games with so many types of vampires. So you cover all the ranges of vampire stories. So I'm thinking, yeah, video game versions of vampires are generally because there's more of it. That's what I'm saying. There's more video game vampires than movie vampires, to be honest.
I can't think of any video game vampires.
There's okay. And there's literally Castlevania that's on Netflix right now. I'm fucking okay. Never mind. Fucking all right. Play some more video games. Jesus, that's all I can say.
Well, there's
someone
Redfall,
is-
which is empty.
Oh,
There's Vampire, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It's what? Did you
Well,
say
like-
that?
Huh?
What was the last one you said?
Vampire.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I haven't finished it, but I like it so far.
Just
Redfall-
watch
Redfall's
Castlevania. It's
decent.
fine.
Redfall's decent, it's just very empty.
Yeah, I was joking, to be fair. I really like Castlevania.
You were just trying to wind him up, weren't you?
You know, so like,
Me and Adam
Because
used to play
Castlevania's-
it.
Yeah, but like
Let's
the
play
Castlevania
this.
version of like Dracula and vampires are quite interesting. And obviously, it's not quite Bram Stoker's, but like they had its own. He has his own like lore and history with like not Mina, but had Lisa instead with his wife, and the half vampire with his son. Fucking what's his name? Alucard, which is just Dracula backwards. And it's just like, oh, okay, cool.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he has a
It's
son.
Dracula
Dracula.
backwards.
Yeah.
That's dead clever, that is.
You
wouldn't
piece
have
of
picked
shit.
that up.
You piece. You piece of shit. You piece of absolute piece of shit. In any case,
These
yeah, that's
fucking
just
French
this.
cartoons.
Yeah, it's just I feel like there's more vampire stories in games than there are in movies. Which is not to say like the ones in the movies are bad. It's just like there's more vampire ones in the games. So it's like there'll probably be like mathematically speaking, there's probably better stories, mostly speaking.
I remember coming up, I needed a vampire name when I was in year 9. I was writing something, and I was like, "Ooh, what's Dracula backwards? Alucard. That's kind of neat." And then I put Alucard into Google search engine, and I found out about an anime featuring Alucard, and I thought, oh,
You're talking about Helsing?
I don't give a fuck what I'm talking about. All I know is I thought it was really cool when I was year 9, and then I thought, I had the sense to just leave it alone. But then someone decided to make it into an actual anime, which is really funny because they had to be an adult who thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of like but it's like he's writing for shonen anime, so he was writing it for year 9s. Yeah, if your target audience is the people who are typically in year 9, and you write something that goes, "Oh, I bet fucking year 9s were fucking like this," then it's like the same.
Don't indulge year 9s. Sometimes you need to just slap them down and go, "Stop it." You don't. No.
But yeah, kids
It's
have
just-
like
it's just-
expendable money.
It's just Dracula. Stop it.
Yeah, it's true.
Don't take fucking cultural icons and turn their names backwards and make an anime based on it. That's just fucking lame and crap. Don't do that.
You just reminded me of something, actually, speaking of like pandering to your audience. So there's this show on Disney Plus. It's called like Ladybug and Cat Noir or something. And it's a kids show,
yeah.
right? And it was on TV the other day, and there's this scene where like one of the characters has a phone, and they basically take a picture with their phone, and somebody says something like, "Hey, that's for phoning, not for taking photos." And I was like, "You really don't care about the kids watching this, because that's a concept that only somebody who's like at least 15 would understand." But then somebody snatches the phone away from them, and then they go, "Hey, that's censorship." And I was like, "They really don't care about the kids watching this." That's like,
What the fuck? How about keep it to like the 4-letter words? Fucking censorship. Wow.
I mean, I guess the only thing I could ask is why were you watching Ladybug and Cat Noir, Rob?
Because there was how old is she? There was a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old in the room at the same time.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that's probably the legit excuse. Yeah.
Today, Lady Bird and Cat Noir go up against capitalism. I'm just like, oh. Hi, Karl Marx. Are you going to help us today?
That was the thing, because they said the censorship bit, and then I was like, "What is this?" And she went, "Oh, it's Ladybug and Cat Noir." And I was like, "Well, even noir is quite that's quite a word for its audience."
Cat Noir is not a million miles away from a hero in the boys, And if you've got access to Google, you're going to see some things you don't want to see.
Yeah.
Actually, I know you weren't a big. No, hang on, you've read the book. You know about Black Noir. I just find that I think that's a funny name. I just enjoy that. It's sort of like in Australia. There's a city called Townsville, which I find fucking hilarious. Because I thought that was
Wait, what is it? Yeah, I was about to say, is that
Townsville's actually like I thought Townsville was like a joke name they made up for the Powerpuff Girls, but Australia obviously took that and went, "Oh, that's cool." Sort of like Alucard. The like actual adults went, "That sounds really cool. I'll have that." Anyway, we've gone off track.
Yeah, especially since like Alucard was actually in the movie Son of Dracula. Yeah, made in like early 1930s.
Was it made by Francis Ford Coppola?
It might have fucking been. I don't know.
I don't think it was.
To be fair, if you look at Francis Ford Coppola's filmography, the question, was it made by Francis Ford Coppola, is always quite an ambiguous answer.
I think honestly, I think it's crazy. This is our second Francis Ford Coppola film, and the other one is Apocalypse Now.
The third one could be Jack, if I get my way.
I mean, someone's going to pick The Godfather at some point.
Not me.
Oh, that's a cool thing about Francis Ford Coppola, actually. Unlike other things that aren't cool. Apparently the reason that he called this Bram Stoker's Dracula is because he wanted it to be known that it's Bram Stoker's story and not his. I thought that was nice.
It's really nice. I like that in conjunction with how Interview with the Vampire deal with it. Anyone remember?
Are you talking about the credit?
No, Christian Slater brings it up and he goes, "So there's no Count Dracula or anything," and Louis says, like, all just fictions, all the product of a deranged mind of a demented Irishman.
There's another quote as well. When they say, "What are you? Nothing, but not vampire." Which I didn't realize I think that's also in Bram Stoker's thing, which also comes up in that film. Very slight.
Says that, doesn't he?
Just to add on to what I was saying earlier, but I did like the kid character, Kristen Dunst. I thought it was done really well, and you do hear that in a lot of kind of vampire kind of stuff. Like you never make them that young. It's against blah 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 more. And there's a lot of stories that kind of have that in their like storyline and threats or whatnot. That was kind of cool. But yeah. The fact that Lestat keeps surviving, I'm just like, I guess they didn't chop off his head, so.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. Like you you put him in a big swamp, and it's kind of like actually cold-blooded creatures. That is literally how crocodiles survived the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. They kept themselves underwater, and they just didn't eat anything. They didn't have to. They just regulated their body temperature while they're underwater, and they could go like years without eating anything because they're not mammals; they're reptiles. So they don't actually need to eat if they don't have to. So yeah, if you're just underwater and everything's just kind of keeping you sort of in stasis, you just sort of just float and you're alive. And that's why we still have crocodiles, and that's why they don't get killed by the Big Bang. But yeah, and then a bunch of alligators come in, and he's like, "Ah, sweet," and then, well, yeah. Also, can I just say the fucking effect on Lestat being like as a corpse, bloody wonderful.
Stan Winston, as usual.
He looks brilliant.
You know about that scene actually. Yeah, like what I felt was quite interesting when I watched it again, is that you see the blood rise from the swamp when he's underneath and the crocodiles go after him. In my head, I like to think that Lestat was drinking off the blood of the crocodiles, and it's not his
He was.
blood. It's going up. It's the crocodile's blood.
Yeah, he
That's
was.
what we see.
He said it afterwards.
Yeah.
And I remember when he said it, I was like, that explains the blood. Because I was just like, when I was watching, I was like,
There we go.
yeah, blood left in him. Why is there blood coming up? It was just, oh, that was you eating the crocodile. That makes sense.
Honestly, I fucking love Lestat. Oh, another little clever. Oh, I don't want to say clever. Another little bit that you might find interesting. You know the servant girl in Louis' mansion, who's like really concerned about that he's not eating anything.
Mm.
That's Sandy Newton.
Yeah, that's
I was like, where's Sandy Newton? And then I was like, is that her? And I was like, fucking hell, she looks so different.
Or Tendue now.
Oh,
He goes
my
by a
bad.
different name now. That's all right. I just found that out today, too.
Oh,
it's
okay.
got a different name.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Miller had corrected me when I was reading it. I was like, oh, it's not just short. That's actually, she just goes by that now.
Anyway, she doesn't look anything like that anymore.
It's just, for me, it was just the head wrap. I recognized it straight away. I was like,
It's
oh,
the head wrap.
to me. Otherwise, I was just like, oh, cool. Who's that? Oh, no. She's dying. Oh, man.
I'm gonna look up this.
I made the meme, guys.
Oh, is it the domino meme?
Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness. I need this in my life.
The one Rob did before, I was just like, oh, my. How does this? Like, these are early connecting.
You spelled Twilight wrong.
Did I? Oh, for fuck's sake.
Otherwise, it's
Oh,
fucking. Oh, I mean, it's fucking perfect. Anyway.
oh, man. Oh, man.
Wait, what's that? Oh, right. 50 Shades of Grey and 9/11. What?
Oh, I'm not reading that. Hmm.
So I got lost along the way. Have y'all done favorite scenes yet?
No.
We haven't done favorite scenes.
Or is there something else I was missing? Because we kind of did both films at the same time. You know.
Yeah, sort of.
It's just been a freeform sort of.
Vamp Fest.
Do you want to do favorite scenes, Emmanuel? While you're conscious.
Yeah, if you have any.
Um, uh,
We can come back to you if you want.
in the interview, I think when he's crying, it's probably quite powerful. There's a lot of It's got a lot of good scenes, but yeah, I think when he's crying, that's probably the second time he's cried. He was like, that was obviously after he killed all the vampires, and then Banderas, he was just like, "Oh, you look, uh, he's like, oh, he's like, yeah, bye."
Mhm.
He basically let him kill all the vampires, and then just got by his own son. With Dracula, probably when he finishes off when the lady finished Dracula, kind of comes full circle, and he he's kind of at peace with her finishing him off because he's been metaphorically chasing her his whole vampiric life, and at least this way he can have his loved one be the one to end it.
Yeah. Right. Who's next? Simon, you can go next as long as you say things that are smart.
Oh, sorry, I was looking for my notes to check. Give me a minute.
How does it compare to Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart's performance?
I did actually see.
Okay, no, okay, Ben, you like I said it as like a half joke, half like thing, right? You got give it, you got to let it calm down, or he's gonna blow a gasp.
I did actually see a review on Letterboxd for Dracula that was like Robert Pattinson could play Dracula, but Gary Oldman couldn't play Edward Cullen.
Oh fuck him! What the fuck?
Fucking good.
Oh no.
Okay.
I mean, what can you say to that?
I
definitely
wouldn't put it past Gary Oldman, honestly.
Okay. Sorry,
Just imagine you got to carry over and you're just going like, okay, you're gonna be teenage heartthrob, fucking creepy weirdo 108 guy, just trying to mac off this 20-year-old. Like, go.
Dude, he would literally just transform in front of your eyes. It would just be another instance where you go, oh shit, that's Gary Oldman.
You just go like, this is the skin of a killer, Bella, and you'd be like, oh shit. Yeah. He'd make it work. If he was doing Edward Cullen, no one would have got mad at the sparkly thing. He'd have just fucking worked.
He'd owned it. Yeah.
On a red, younger looking Gary Oldman. At first, Camilla thought it was Johnny Depp.
No, really?
I was just like, from a certain angle, when when Keanu Reeves was just like, that's him. He's looking at me, or whatever kind of thing.
No. The accent's too good. You have to do it a bit worse than that. You have to go, oh no, the bloody bastard's looking at me.
It's him.
It's him and his bloody wolves.
But saying that, when you said Robert Pattinson, I imagined Robert Pattinson in Keanu Reeves' role instead. It's like,
Oh,
Why did Alex
fucking kill him? And then you'd ask him about it like directly afterward, and he'd go, And he'd go, do you remember when you starred in Bram Stoker's Dracula? Robert Pattinson would go, what? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Why did Alex sound like Stewie Griffin for a minute?
Oh, because I'm doing Keanu Reeves' English accent. With his bloody walls from Budapest. Give me my wig. I wish to look like Dr. You.
Saying the
So
accents with the vampire were a tiny bit off, I have to say.
Wait, what?
leave it off.
Huh?
An interview with a vampire, did you say?
Wait, who?
Maybe it's because I didn't expect it, but I got used to it. But I think I'm so used to, obviously we're so used to hearing Brad Pitt and not Brad Pitt's voice. Tom Cruise's was pretty fine, but at first it wasn't necessarily off, but I was just like, it was off-putting at first because I was just like, did they just dub Brad Pitt, or is that his
Well,
actual? When I first started watching it, then I realized, oh, it's just him with a very different accent because of the time period. Okay.
I'm surprised
yeah,
you
because
got that with Brad Pitt because like with Tom Cruise, like I didn't get it, but I could see why some of the things that he says would ring a bit weird just because there's so many like syllables packed into every time he opens his mouth. like you know
What?
that bit where he's like "The vampire goes insane and pollutes his own bed." I was like, oh, that would have taken me a lot of tries to get out.
Because Brad Pitt's it begins. The story begins when he's like just lost his wife, right? And he's a plantation owner, and it lives in the south of America. But I can't remember
yeah,
what year that is
'cause-
supposed to be.
isn't it because he grew up with I would like to say Creole. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly. It's like
Yeah.
Creole. Yeah, because like he grew up with those people, and he may have like picked up that sort of like accent with during that time period. That's what I always thought. Then afterwards, it's when he says about after 100 or so years, we were called Americans, and I was like, oh right, yes, because when they were going off the boat with like Claudia and when I was cool. No, he's not. No, he's Louis, and his one's with Lestrade. Yeah, where they're off the boat, and they're like, we're now we've got to change our names. We've dubbed as Americans. That's when the accent kind of like rechanges again. I was like, oh right, yeah, I can see where it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't give me. Oh, Simon's frozen.
Oh, sorry. Say again.
I was like, oh, you're frozen. I was gonna say, don't get me wrong, Rob. Like Tom Cruise was weird for me at first as well, but I think by that point, Brad Pitt's accent already kind of like eased me in. So by the time we met Tom Cruise, I was just like, yeah, we are in this era. Okay, cool. Yeah, he definitely from there. Ah, he's from Paris. That makes sense. Okay, cool. Like again, I don't like I I think I was just like I wasn't expecting it. So I was just like, oh, wait, what? Why does it sound like that? And I think there was also a weird kind of thing right in the beginning, more of a sound, a kind of sound, a post sound thing. There was a part near the beginning, the dialogue for Brad Pitt was like processed a little bit differently than I think any of the other sound in the film for like the speaking characters, or quite a bit differently. So I was also a bit like, huh, what's going on here? But that's just the technical side of things. Otherwise, after that, didn't really think too much of it.
So my answer was for favorite scenes for Dracula. It's a lot of like the sort of like funny, like silly, kind of like funnier scenes where you see Gary Oldman with Keanu Reeves, and it's like, and he's like looking at him with his like Mr. Bernhard, like, yes, they said you are a man of impeccable tastes, and he's like slightly drooling in his mouth, and he's like, yes, and there's something about that. It's like, it's hilarious because you go, right, yeah, he wants to eat him, but it's just like most of those scenes are quite good. It's the scenes with Gary Oldman being a great actor and Keanu Reeves being not a great actor, and the comparisons during that is
100%.
like, it's great. For Interview with the Vampire,
100%.
I would say it's the it's the scene. Is it? I mean, it is the scenes with Claudia and like the ending scene as well. But like, it's the scenes with Claudia where it kind of seems like they could be, I wouldn't say normal family, but it was like a happy family, I guess. But it's kind of like, it's like this, like, obviously it starts off kind of like they're together. Then afterwards, like, it slowly goes down, especially when, you know, Claudia has like the dead lady on her bed, and afterwards it's sort of like slowly just spirals down into madness. And obviously him, Brad Pitt's character, just telling the story to the interviewer, and he's like, oh, so I've told you this harrowing tale about all my pain and suffering. So what did you get out of it? Vampires are cool. Can I be one? Yes, that's not great. Yeah, those are my favorite scenes.
It's just like Twilight.
You have created a new thread for Eric to abuse.
Cool. He just has to realise I'm talking about Interview with the Vampire. That's it.
It's like fishing.
I was just about to say, no longer will he say. It's just like fishing. From now on,
It's
it's
just
just
like
like Twilight.
We never throw any away. We just had well,
I mean, as long as he agrees, it's fine then.
I don't agree.
Oh, I mean, you can't really say it unless you agree.
I can mock you without agreeing.
I mean, all that means is I agree that Interview with the Vampire is just like Twilight every time you say it.
No, it doesn't. It means I'm mocking you.
I mean, I'm just, then that all that means is I just have to agree with the film. Interview with the Vampire is just like Twilight. That's all you could say.
No, that's not how that
I
works.
mean, yes. I mean, yeah, it does.
I mean, no.
Yes.
No.
I mean, yes.
Mm.
I mean, definitely yes.
No.
In any case, Ben, do you have any sort of favourite scenes?
No.
For Dracula, there's quite a few. Obviously, like the whole. I think probably the easiest favorite scene I could say is the prologue. Is probably just like brilliantly realized. The whole backstory of like tying the origin of Dracula as he was, as if he was Vlad the Impaler in that time period, and the whole reason for him being was so perfectly done in less than 10 minutes, just setting up the story with just like a fantastic costume. You create the absolutely brilliant soundtrack and the wonderful visual effects all in that bit. That's when it all works for me so well, because it's that just perfect setup there. The rest of the film, there were like moments anytime like Gary Oldman's on screen, when he the first time he kind of like, you see his fangs just kind of like just grow when he's about to take the bite. I think that's a brilliant piece of visual effects there, because it's so seamless. Any of the parts where he's kind of like in transformation, or he's transformed, and the ending sequence where he's finally with Mina and he kind of like eventually dies. So yeah, many of those sequences are fantastic in my opinion. As for Interview with the Vampire, I think it's one of the most horrific scenes. One of the most interesting is when Lestat brings that woman back into their home. Into him and Louis are just in that little hut. I don't even know where it is. It's a hotel suite or something. So just this room, and they bring this woman in, and she's kind of like enraptured by them, and Lestat's seducing her, and he's just ravishing her, and then he literally goes. He is basically bringing her in for them to feast on. And she just suddenly has this realization when she looks down, she's covered in blood, and then Lestat just literally just like it's just like plays it off as if it's nothing, and Louis just watching in absolute terror and disgust of what he must do, and Lestat's just kind of like shrugging it all off as if it's nothing. And yeah, it's just a great moment of both characters being so like polar opposites, but they're being forced to do this thing to keep themselves alive. And Lestat knows how to do it, and he's just so desensitized by it all. And Louis is just so like averse by it. So yeah, that's one of my favorite bits, as well as the horrible scene where basically he comes back out of his coffin. He breaks out of his crypt and he sees like the ashes from the girl and the woman. What are their names?
Claudia.
It was too late. Yeah, he was just too late to do anything because obviously he couldn't have done anything. But the fact that they were completely vaporized by the sun as well. That's the scene before that. Very powerful there. Like most of the scenes in it were very powerful and disturbing, but that's probably why they were so good. Yeah.
Who's next? Oh no, I just heard myself.
My favourite scene from Dracula didn't really change. So like when, pardon me, when I was watching it, I got to the bit where it's the one I was talking about earlier, where Keanu Reeves kind of like loses track of Gary Oldman, and then he pops up, and Keanu Reeves is like, "Ugh." Like when I was watching it, I messaged Alec and I was like, right, that's my favourite scene straight away. and there was nothing. I think what you said, Simon, about like the scenes where Gary Oldman's acting well and Keanu Reeves isn't acting well, they are like they just appeal to what I love about like B movies and stuff. So yeah, I found that hilarious. My favourite scene in Interview with a Vampire, it's more of a favourite quote really, but it's I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's the one where the stats like God kills indiscriminately, and he's kind of like rationalizing what they're doing by sort of I guess like just making out as if they're just like a natural part of the world. And yeah, I just find it like super creepy because I'm like, imagine being that detached from like empathy and just any kind of like emotion that you can just go like, yeah, this is like me going around and killing people and drinking their blood. Like that's just like that's how the world works, and I'm just part of it, kind of thing. Like I find it really unsettling. It's a bit like it's something that I've spoken to you guys about before, but whenever I watch like a true crime documentary or something like that, it always puts me on like it puts me in like a really weird headspace because I always kind of watch it and then I'm like, oh man, like if that person has ended up with that view of the world, then what's stopping like anyone from having that view of the world? And like I get like a similar feeling from that. And yeah, it's very unsettling to me.
Yeah, good point. I did think of one good scene with Keanu though. But
Oh, yeah.
it's
You're a
more.
fucking liar.
It's not because of Keanu, because he's not speaking. It's the scene where he stumbles in that room, and then the brides of Dracula, come after him, and he's literally ravished by them. He doesn't speak a word, and then he's just seduced by Monica Bellucci and all the Dracula's brides. So
Oh yeah, happy birthday.
only
Monica.
good, only good bit of Keanu's performance.
Pat unmuted himself with purpose. I think he's ready.
Oh, you noticed, did you?
Such a scorned girlfriend.
My favourite scene of Dracula was probably when Keanu Reeves first met Dracula. I thought that was pretty cool. And also sort of like the prologue stuff. I thought that looked pretty neat as well. I found the funniest part of it. I found was seeing Keanu Reeves getting his nipple licked. I laughed so hard at that. I don't know why. I was like, John would be all over this.
Oh, he
Ah.
would be a fucking bride,
It's
wouldn't he?
no laughing matter.
I was like, what's the point of this? But I also felt like if you took the name Dracula out of it, this would probably sort of border on the line of an erotic film as well. Just because of
Yeah.
the way some of the scenes played out. But I'd say like the prologue scene and then the meeting in Dracula's castle was probably my favourite part of that film.
I will agree. You could replace Dracula with Madonna, and it'd make about as much sense. She's just trying to buy up all these properties so she can live longer.
My favourite scene in Interview with the Vampire was the end bit after Malloy, is it? Finishes his interview, and all of a sudden here comes Tom Cruise and gives him a good old sucker bite to the neck. That sort of that
Good old
ends.
suck.
Was that?
Gives him a good old suck.
You could say that.
Apply the big suck.
There was another scene in there that I quite liked, but it's escaped me. Probably when he turned Louis the first time as well, because Louis was basically done with life at that point, and he sort of the status sort of taking a chance of like, oh, I could mold him into something here. And the whole time Louis just miserable. I think the whole time Louis like, I wish you just let me die. Like, 'cause he's obviously stuck in this hell of living forever. But yeah, I'd say the end scene is probably my favourite in that film.
I gotta say that is one of the few films where I can watch the credits all the way to the end. Right. I love that cover.
The,
Sorry.
Do you know a TV series for this?
Yeah.
Huh?
All right.
We talked over each other there, I think.
Have we?
We reached a stalemate.
No, whoops.
Yeah, that was a good cover. What was it? Guns N' Roses covering Rolling Stones.
Mm.
Yeah, and Pat said there's a TV series I haven't seen. I don't know if it's any good though. Of an adaptation of the book.
Terrible.
Oh, it's a miniseries though.
Let him at it.
What's the name of the series again?
Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah, you never guess it.
Did see it was series.
It's an interview with Edward Cullen. And it goes, it's like, well, you what?
No, get you.
Very good.
Hey Alec, what's your favourite scene? Oh, I'm glad you asked. My favourite scene for Dracula is it's the werewolf bit. The werewolf bit's really fucking cool. I really, really like the werewolf bit.
The werewolf bit, to be honest, is where I sort of went, yeah, that's that's what Alex's talking about with with it going between really good and really odd.
I also enjoyed when they go and behead the lady. I feel like we didn't mention Anthony Hopkins very much. But I really enjoy his character. And I enjoy how at odds he is with the people of his time, where he's like, I need to do an autopsy on Lucy, and Richard E. Grant's like, oh no, not on Lucy. What do you mean an autopsy? And he's like, I want to cut off her head and go through her organs. And he's like, oh my god, really enjoy that. Also, the bit where when Hunter Ryder's like, did Lucy suffer? And he's just like, she did until we cut off her head and went through her organs. And Keanu Reeves is like, Doctor, please. And it's like, I just
That
enjoy
is
Anthony
fantastic.
Hopkins' delivery there. He's doing
He's
pretty
the best Van Helsing, 100%.
better than huge jacked man. So it's my second Anthony Hopkins pick of the year. So like,
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah, Anthony Hopkins has been very popular this year.
Yeah, he's always great, to be fair. And even in weaker films, he's always fantastic, no matter what.
So big fan of him killing the brides all by himself. Think that's a really cool bit. Also,
Yeah.
I can't help but laugh but go like, I will protect you until the very end, and then he puts a cigarette lighter into Winona's face.
Yes.
Really fucking makes me laugh every time. I really enjoy that.
I cast you out.
And then he like chucks all the heads off of the bridge. I think that's really cool. Everything with Anthony Hopkins. Big fan. Not a big fan of Tom Waits. I think he's a bit crap. But
He's
Oh,
Tom Waits. His voice really good because he's talking like this.
you're Tom Waits.
oh, Ben, I forgot to tell you.
Tom Waits
Something
been
happened. Something happened in the week that I think you would find as distressing as I did. Because
Oh,
Tom
Don't
Waits
help.
is a
Alec was
nonce.
like, Alec
Oh, no,
was like,
thanks for
"Hey
that.
man, this has got a common actor with the Fisher King, some guy called Tom Waits," and I was like, "What?"
What?
He didn't know he was a musician.
and I still arguably don't.
On that note, actually, the film before this was a film called One from the Heart, that Coppola directed himself, and it was a musical, and it was basically a Tom Waits musical in a sense. He did the soundtrack and score and all the songs and like that, and it was a complete flop, but it was really quite a visual spectacle, and it really kind of like pushed the boundaries of like filmmaking. So it is quite sad that it didn't go anywhere. Even no one really took to it, but it was. I remember seeing it ages ago. It's very interesting and very unusual. But yeah, if you don't like Tom Waits singing, you're probably not gonna like that film at all. But
I have absolutely no opinion on his singing. All I know is I'm not that big on his Renfield, but that's okay.
that's fair. But yeah, it's a shame because I think the film being such a disaster kind of made him do director because he wanted to go the opposite of that. He was like, oh, I'm not going to use any cutting edge technology. I'm going to go the opposite way and go back in time and deliberately use old stuff for Dracula. So that's the reason. That's one of the reasons why he went proper old school with this.
Oh, you don't like my Tom Waits musical? Well, how about Keanu Reeves saying Budapest?
You
You look like such an anime nerd right now. You got the fucking glasses, and you're gonna just push them up into the bridge of your nose, and they're gonna go shing.
Is that an anime thing?
That is a definite anime thing.
Yes,
I mean,
100%.
Yeah.
no, it's news to me.
Phew. And then my favourite scene for Interview with the Vampire is like the whole montage stuff with Claudia and them adjusting to Claudia and her killing all of the help. Really enjoy all of that. Also, I like it when he kills the guy from V for Vendetta, who is the ballerina bloke.
What was his name?
Renace?
Stephen Rear.
Stephen Ree. That's it.
Stephen Rear.
Yeah, he reared his head.
Yeah. Yeah, really glad he kills him. That's great. Big fan. Also, I like the bit with the boobies. That's cool.
There was lots of them.
But every scene with Lestat is fucking gold. Big fan.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think that rounds us out. Have we got any lingering thoughts about Dracula or Interview with the Vampire? No, I
Yeah, a
can just
little
hit
one actually.
football.
Have you ever watched Queen of the Damned?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
Alex would like it. No.
Oh, it's awful.
Can't.
It's,
It misses the point of Interview with Vampire. I think only me and
Mm.
Amanda like it for the soundtrack, and that's about it.
It's a really weird film, man. Like Lestat wakes up and he's so bored that he becomes like a lead singer.
Yeah, he becomes a rock star in a metal band. And
Yeah.
that's
Well.
basically that's the whole point, is that they made the film around the soundtrack, like to get all these new metal artists to do this crazy soundtrack. And so they wrote the script around that to a degree. And he's just like, I'm this rock star and everyone loves me. And he basically becomes a Jared Leto character in real life.
Really weird. It's really
What the
weird.
Yes, we're not joking. It's 100% true.
No, I believe
And
you. I
he's-
saw Blues Brothers 2000. I know what.
Yeah, it probably is in that same vein.
It's literally framed as that as well. It's like, oh, Lestat's bored, so now he's in a band. Like, it's-
Everyone loves him. All the girls fangirl over him. That's it.
I'm on harmonica, Louis.
So, was it Emmanuel's choice next, right?
Yeah.
Only if he's
Yes.
conscious.
What, is Emmanuel alive?
Oh no, he wasn't. He was conscious not long ago.
Oh no.
What should we say to wake him up? What usually triggers him?
Anime
we can just
shit.
go. No, that's not going to wake him up. You go. I mean, the best way to do it is call Camilla and get Camilla to wake him up, to be honest.
What's that in the distance? It's a yam roll.
Oh, so we have Emmanuel next, and then someone's double bill after that.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait. Hang on. Not another foreign film. Okay, wait, I'll try again. Not another film with castration in it.
Hey, is that
No,
that amazing Korean actor? No, okay, no, that's just a single thing.
Yeah.
Like,
We need some more Song Kang Ho in our lives. Let's do that. Manuel,
I
you're the
mean,
guy.
if he has fallen asleep, we could always swap him and Simon.
but no, I think it's a bit weird to do double bill and double bill.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah,
got
fair point. Yeah.
No, I like it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
It's I mean, like, is it?
I'll have
Hmm?
another go. I pick something else.
It's going to be a film that he hasn't seen but always wanted to see. I guarantee.
I mean, like, in any case, I've got to do some paperwork. I think. Just give me. I mean, I'm gonna leave the call for now. Just tell me when. Yes, I mean, he's gonna put it up eventually on the chat, anyways.
Yeah, he'll
So,
tell
right.
us.
All right.
Yeah,
Take
see
care,
you
guys.
later.
See you in a bit, dudes.
Bye.
Bye.
Never darken my doorstep again. Oh. Well,